You talk about truth affecting them.
So there was an article in Brentwood Press that they had done on the Muslims in downtown Brentwood. They're down there every Saturday morning, farmers market. If you read that article and know nothing else, you want to run down there and join. You want to head for that first mosque and sign up. There's that positive about there. Of course, like you said, they got so much stuff.
But then there's so many other things.
Great article about how wonderful they are.
Yeah.
And great things they do. And I guess they do some good things.
Mormonism is no different. I'm sure Jehovah's Witness is no different. They tell you all the good things about the cult. And then you find out all the dirty stuff later. Tonight we're going to do just that. Polygamy. This is a subject that most Mormons don't want to talk about, and there's good reason for it. So we'll just get started here. When talking about Mormonism, the subject of polygamy almost always comes up. When I was investigating the church in 1995, I asked the missionaries if they practiced polygamy. One of the elders attempted to give me a very sincere answer. He told me that polygamy was practiced for a very short time in the early stages of the church history, but that it was no longer needed. He told me that because of persecution, many of the men had been killed off. The men who were left took the widows and orphans as their own. Sounds pretty innocent, doesn't it? After the male population had been replenished, the Lord commanded the practice to be discontinued. He went on to say that polygamy had also been practiced in Bible times for similar reasons, but that it had always been done under the Lord's direction. I asked him, how many wives did Joseph Smith have? He told me that it was, and this is in 1995, he told me that it was his understanding that Joseph was only married to one wife, Emma. He said that polygamy wasn't practiced until the church moved west to Salt Lake City due to heavy persecution. I accepted this answer as genuine and true, and since I had not seen any polygamous families the prior Sunday at church, I put the matter to rest. So what does the church teach today? Let's read an excerpt from one of the Mormon essays produced by the church in 2014 entitled Plural Marriage in Kirtland and Nauvoo. I brought these essays up several times over these classes, and so go online, it's right there, and read it. This is what they say now. Latter-day Saints believe that monogamy, the marriage of one man and one woman, is the Lord's standing law of marriage. Listen to this. In biblical times, the Lord commanded, I want you to underline commanded on your sheets. In biblical times, the Lord commanded some of his people to practice plural marriage, the marriage of one man and more than one woman. Some early members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints also received and obeyed this commandment given through God's prophets. The Lord never commanded this, and we're going to have to take that apart in the Bible. After receiving a revelation commanding him to practice plural marriage, Joseph Smith married multiple wives and introduced the practice to close associates. This principle was among the most challenging aspect of the Restoration. For Joseph personally and for other church members, plural marriage tested the faith and provoked controversy and opposition. Few Latter-day Saints initially welcomed the restoration of a biblical practice, underline biblical practice because that's a lie, entirely foreign to their sensibilities. But many later testified of powerful spiritual experiences that helped them overcome their hesitation and gave them courage to accept this practice. Very carefully worded. During the era in which plural marriage was practiced, Latter-day Saints distinguished between sealings for time and eternity and sealings for eternity only. Sealings for time and eternity included commitments and relationships during this life, generally including the possibility of sexual relations. Eternity-only sealings indicated relationships in the next life only. Evidence indicates that Joseph Smith practiced in both types of sealings. Yeah, what is the evidence? He had children by these women. The exact number of women to whom he was sealed in his lifetime is unknown because the evidence is fragmentary. But then there's a little footnote when you go online, and it'll tell you that he had 30 to 40 wives.
He'd be a good Muslim.
He would have. I said, I think they can only have 3.
4.
So, is it 4? And I actually have gone online to the church, it's called familysearch.org, which is where when you're doing your genealogy, you go and, we talked about it when you're going to the temple, you go and you put your names into the computer and you get a printout, you take that to the temple, you go and get the Masonic handshakes, blah, 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 blah. I went in and punched in Joseph Smith's name, and I counted 43 wives. I did this in, I think, 2008 or 2009, and at the time, I think 21 wives came up. But as people keep doing their genealogy, this guy keeps popping out wives. So, right now there are 43. And I did this, sometime after these essays come out. So I don't know what it is now. You may have more.
Billy, when they talked about killing, when you talk about many of the men have been killed, what is that number, percentage, or what?
I don't know what the percentage was. There, you hear all these stories, and I don't even know now how much of it is true. But when you're in the church, they tell you, you know what? It's in any cult. They tell you that there's all this persecution that people have, and there was some. There's no doubt about that. I don't know how many people were killed. I know that there were some. But they would have you to believe that the Mormons were constantly under gunfire. That was the excuse that the missionary gave me, and it sounded like a nice thing that these men got killed. They said it was a different day and time. Women couldn't just go out and get a job. They had to have a man to help take care of them and their children. So these other men took on these other wives. It's just not true. It's just not true. We're going to go through here and see that is not what was going on. What they don't tell you, Joseph Smith and the church today claimed that he restored polygamy as practiced in Bible times. Let's look at how polygamy was practiced in the Bible and compare it to how Joseph and the Latter-day Saints practiced it. Let's go to the Old Testament here. Leviticus 18. Do not have sexual relations with both a woman and her daughter. Do not have sexual relations. And understand, God is not commanding polygamy. They were already practicing it. Moses is giving them some kind of structure and telling them in these passages that we're reading that there's just some lines you don't cross even with polygamy. But nowhere, never did God command polygamy. They'll tell you that God commanded Sarah to give Hagar to Abraham. That is not true. God never commanded that. Show it to me in the Bible where it says God commanded Sarah to give Hagar to Abraham. That was all Sarah and Abraham. Where was that? Do not have sexual relations with either her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter. They are her close relatives. This is wickedness. Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife and have sexual relationships with her while your wife is living. Do not have sexual relationships with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. And the reason I'm pointing all these out is because this is exactly what Joseph Smith did. I'll show you later. The punishment is death. If a man commits adultery, what's that? Question? No? If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress are to be put to death. If a man marries both a woman and her mother, it is wicked. Both he and they must be burned in the fire, so that no wickedness will be among you. These are just some of the rules that Moses was given to them when they were practicing.
Question, Billy.
Yes.
Did the Book of Mormon specify at all polygamy or even talk about it?
Yes, it does. The Book of Mormon strictly forbids polygamy. And was it
But that was
Jacob
later,
chapter 2?
Almost the whole book of Jacob. Yeah. Pages and pages.
Yeah.
But that came later, up in Moroni.
Well, the Book of Mormon was the first thing one of the first things that came about. And at that time that Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon, he was not practicing polygamy. See, so when he's writing it, it's bad, and you can read it for yourself. The Book of Jacob in the Book of Mormon. But later, Joseph is practicing it. So it's against their own book. Wives are not to. Okay, so in the New Testament, what do we find? Why? This is Paul. Now remember, Moses. They're practicing polygamy. Moses gives them some kind of borders here. But what does Paul say now in the New Testament? Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it. 1 Corinthians. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Is that clear?
Clear.
Okay. Your own wife, your own husband. How can it be your own husband if there's 4 other wives? Or 40? It's clear to me. A bishop must be blameless and the husband of one wife. Now they'll quote this scripture, and what they'll say is, since the bishop, he's such a busy guy, he wouldn't have time to have all these wives. But clearly, they'll quote this one scripture and say, clearly, Paul wouldn't have said this unless they were practicing polygamy. But what we see here is, yeah, there were some of them still practicing polygamy, and they were trying to put an end to it. Very clear. Have your own husband, your own wife. It would appear from these scriptures and others that the church in the New Testament was trying to break away from polygamy. So what was Joseph Smith trying to restore? The old law? What was the Lord's opinion on polygamy in the Old Testament? Now here's what the Lord says. He obviously didn't think it was think of it as positive. Deuteronomy. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of horses for himself, or make the people return to Egypt to get more of them. For the Lord has told you, you are not to go back that way again. He must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. He must not accumulate large amounts of silver and gold. In the Old and New Testaments, and you all know the story of David, right? Mm-hmm. And you know he had multiple wives. And at some point the prophet Nathan comes to him and calls him out on this thing. It was all over Bathsheba. But what does David do? He comes to realize that he's wrong. And what does he do with all these wives? Does anybody know? You go and read, I think it's 1 Samuel. He had all of his wives taken to this house. He didn't just leave them, but he had guards placed out, and he had them make sure they were fed. But the Bible says that after he had this change of heart, after he repented, he had no more sexual relationships with any of these women. He took care of them and did what he was supposed to do, and their children, but he stopped the practice. In both the Old and New Testaments, God never commanded anyone to enter into polygamy. It happened, but it was man's choice, not God's. Now let's look at how Joseph Smith and the Latter-day Saints practiced polygamy and how important it was to them and their religion. Again, Doctrine and Covenants 132. We went over this when we went over that when we had our lesson on the Doctrine and Covenants, but I'll touch on it again. If any man espouses a virgin and espouses another, the first gives her consent. That's the first point. The first wife has to give consent. Emma never did. If that happens, he cannot commit adultery, for they are given unto him, and they belong to him. And if they're virgins, and if they do something, they've committed adultery. And if she doesn't agree to it, she'll be destroyed. We talked about all this, I think. So, what was it? The three things. First, your first wife has to give consent. They have to be virgins, and they have to be not committed to any other man. That's the law, or the revelation in Doctrine and Covenants 132. But Joseph didn't live by any of those. None of them.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If the whole idea was because the men were being killed off and they were being
Widowed.
yeah, and they were being heroic by marrying the widows and taking in their children, but they're not virgins.
That's not the case anyway. That is not. None of that is the case. We're going to see here. That is
Well, I
not-
mean, it already goes against. This was written in 1831. Okay.
It wasn't written in 1831. If you read the heading, Joseph Smith knew about it in 1831, but the heading of it, can I put that on here?
I got it.
What year was it published?
Oh, I don't
What
know.
year was the Doctrine and Covenants published?
132.
Oh,
It says he knew about it as
It was
early as
published in 1843. But
1843.
in here it says, the historical records that the doctrine and principles involved in this revelation had been known by the prophet since 1831.
Yeah, because that's when he first
In
started believing.
1833, the prophet published the doctrine, the Book of Commandments, which tells you are to have one wife only.
Right. And you all remember that from that when we talked about the Doctrine and Covenants, right? In the book of I should say the Doctrine and Covenants, first edition, it said, and like he was saying, one man, one wife. But even though it said that, Joseph was practicing polygamy already. It was a lie.
Why did they keep doing it then, even to the 1900s?
Why did they keep doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, if the excuse was that the men had been
Why did
killed
they-
off, why did they continue to
Yeah.
do it? Because it had nothing to do with that was a lie. That was a lie that they told the Jews.
less.
Because their doctrine says you must participate in polygamy in order to be a god. That's the doctrine. That's the truth. That's not what they want to talk about. That's not what the missionaries tell you when they knock on the door. But that's the doctrine. You must participate in polygamy to be a god.
That's the doctrine still today.
But you hear all this in the public, everybody, when you think Mormon, or at least you used to, when you think Mormon, you think polygamy. So whenever the missionaries would knock on the door back in 1995, one of the first things come up, don't you guys practice polygamy? Because that's what you hear all the time, right? So they had this clever little answer they give you that, well, the men had been killed off, blah, 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 blah.
So
It's not true.
1990s when they finally came out with a prophet saying, reiterating the practice that it was against the laws of the...
1890, and then it became
But they were still doing it until
1903.
Before they actually quit.
2014 or something came out and made a public statement on it.
2014 is when
Yeah.
they put the essay out. That's
So
right.
what about the intervening time?
I was lied to. All that time I was going to church and being told Joseph only had Emma.
Why did they have to do it then if back in the original doctrine?
They chose to.
Well, they also, is it the second sealing? What was where they get baptized the second time and all their sins don't count
All the
anymore?
second anointing.
Yeah, second anointing. So that, even though they may know that there's lies, that's okay. I've got this special anointing.
The top leaders do.
Yeah, so we can go ahead and do this, and then
They have no
King's
sin.
X.
It gets filthier as we go. It gets to be more than polygamy.
Can I read the first 4 scriptures?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so this is his book. It's the Doctrine and Covenants, section 132. It's still doctrine today. This is what's still practiced in the church.
They carry
in
this
the
with them every
scriptures.
Sunday.
All right, yeah.
They don't read it, but it's in their hand.
So the first 4 scriptures, when you open this book, show it to any Mormon. Oh, no. Well, it's right there, buddy. Verily thus saith the Lord unto my servant Joseph, that inasmuch as you have inquired of my hand to know the understanding wherein I, the Lord, justified my servants Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, also Moses, David, and Solomon, my servants, as touching the principle and doctrine of their having many wives and concubines. Behold, and lo, I am the Lord thy God, and will answer thee as touching this matter. Therefore, prepare thy heart to receive and obey the instructions which I am about to give unto you. For all those who have this law of polygamy revealed unto them must obey the same. For behold, I reveal unto you a new and everlasting covenant, which is called celestial marriage. And if ye abide not to that covenant of celestial marriage, then are ye damned. For no one can reject this covenant and be permitted to enter into my glory.
So if you do not practice polygamy, you will not become a god.
So it's still in the Doctrine and Covenants.
It's still there.
That's important.
Where was that at again?
Section 132, verse 1 through 4.
Section 132 is all about the doctrine of polygamy.
I may have missed this when I stepped out, but even when they issued the extermination order, a lot of the higher-ups in the church didn't adhere to that
No.
because they fled to Mexico with all their wives so that they didn't have to not abide by it.
Right, so we'll touch on that real quick. So when they ended polygamy, so-called ended it, was there a revelation where, like all these other revelations of Doctrine and Covenants, where it says, thus saith the Lord, hear me, O Israel, stop polygamy? No. What they got was something called a official declaration. So it's what we have, and you can look that up online. I don't think it's in your handout, but it's official.
What did it ended because they wouldn't make Utah a state unless they abandoned the polygamy.
It was a federal law. Polygamy was against federal law. The Mormons were practicing it. They wanted to become a state, and the government said, no way until you end that. But there was no, I want to stress that to you. In the Doctrine and Covenants, all of those revelations are, thus saith the Lord, hear me, O Israel. And then he gives them this revelation. But not when it comes to polygamy. They gave what's called an official declaration, number 1, with the president of the church, who was it at the time? Wilford Woodruff. I have a picture of Wilford Woodruff. Where is it? Where's my mouse? Nice picture of Wilford. There he is, the one in the middle. Isn't that a wonderful family portrait?
Is that for real?
That is for real.
Actually, I think that's Heber J. Grant.
Is it?
I believe
Maybe
that
it is.
yes.
Well, this is the prophet at the time. He was arrested for polygamy, and there's all his buddies, and Little family portrait there.
They've been wearing striped suits forever.
Isn't that cool? That is a cool picture though.
Striking a pose.
But they didn't, there was no revelation to end it. There was a declaration by the president telling the church not to do it anymore, and they still continued to practice it for several more years. So what does that mean then? If Doctrine and Covenants 132 says you must, and George just read it, you must participate in polygamy in order to become a god, and we have a declaration here telling them not to practice it, so what is that declaration? It's not a commandment. It's not a revelation, so what is it? Okay.
I don't know what it was, but just to go back just a little bit, was it Romney's father or grandfather that fled to Mexico with his wife? It was
I don't know.
one of the Romneys.
Took off to Mexico.
Went off to Mexico.
His grandfather was born in Mexico because in 1890, the church was actually living, Utah was Mexico. So when America was trying to annex Utah, the Mormons went to Canada and made a settlement there, which is polygamy is still illegal in 1890 in Canada, as much as same thing as in Mexico. Cardston, Canada, and Chinchilla, Mexico, something like that.
Carson is a big temple up there. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's still in effect. Polygamy is still in effect. They're just not practicing it right now. The official declaration means they're not practicing it right now. But Doctrine and Covenants 132 stands. You must, at some point, either in this life or the next, participate in polygamy if you're going to be a god. So, I remember, you know what I'm thinking, don't you? So many times I heard women in the church cling to that one sentence in Doctrine and Covenants 132 where it says you have to have the permission of the first wife. And I'm never given permission. I'm never going to do it.
Yeah, but they get to kill you.
You must.
Or you die.
Or you will be destroyed.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta give permission, but you don't have any authority to do so. Because if you don't, you're going to.
So were
So
women
anybody,
killed?
I'm sorry?
Were women killed that didn't?
I don't know. I don't know of any that were killed.
But they were in great fear.
What are you going to do? You're out here in the middle of the desert, and they say, and you will give permission or be destroyed. Well, who are you going to tell?
Yeah.
The sheriff?
Especially if the man is.
He's got 15 wives.
Bigger than you.
What were you going to do? You were going to submit. And they did.
Did any men just say enough of this? And
I'm sure there were.
About 90%. There's only like 10% who actually practice polygamy.
Gordon B. Hinckley said 2%, but I know it was more than that. It had to be more than that. Do you have a question?
No, I was just going to ask about, so now people who are serious Mormons, they just think, I'll do it, it'll be in the after I'm dead that this will happen.
I think most of them don't want to think about it, but a lot of women, from what I have heard them say, are really under the impression of, I just don't have to give permission. But it says, and George just read it, if you do not participate, you will not be a goddess.
So they just don't read.
Yeah, but it's their standard practice of taking
You know
things
what?
out of context. I'm going to read this part, and I'm not going to look at the rest.
That's right. And then I can go along and be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
We'll figure this out later. You better figure it out now, because after you die is not the time to find out if this is true or not. Okay? This is, go ahead.
For women, and when I'm just reading the section 132, it says, as pertaining to the law of the priesthood. So the way that I interpret that, women can't be priests. So if that's the case, this is really referring to men needing to participate in polygamy in order for exaltation into kingdom.
But women become,
For a woman.
They go along for the ride.
They can go, they either are going to, give permission, which most won't, which then would mean that their husband, who is a priest, will never go to.
but when you marry into the woman, this is why it's been explained to me, women hold the priesthood through their husband.
But he's saying.
They become a priestesses. How's it? I can never say it. Priestess. What do they say in the temple? You become.
It's a priestess to your husband,
Priest and priestesses.
but
Kings and queens,
Priest and priestesses.
prince and princesses, priests and priestesses, over dominions and all this stuff that they say.
But they have no say
Real
nor
authority.
power
They have
or
no real
anything, they're
authority.
just used.
It's crap.
They're supposed to be used in the celestial kingdom as well as on earth.
Baby makers.
No, you can have babies forever. That's
Except
pretty
they're all
good.
going to find out that they're dead. Certainly no point.
Yeah.
But he was saying, so they can't ever get exalted beyond priest though if she says no, like she thinks she's going to.
Well, actually, you can, because you can kill her off.
That's right.
You can go find another first wife that's gonna get you in.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's a simple concept.
Right.
That's right.
But they're
I can
not.
replace you very easily.
Did you ever say to one of the missionaries, is this your only wife?
No.
What do you can't be a guy? Can you be a guy?
I didn't know this when they knocked on my door.
Okay.
I didn't know
I
this.
wonder how they would read it.
I didn't figure, I mean, then after I was in the church for a few years, then I heard about polygamy, that it really was practiced, and then I found out about Doctrine and Covenants 132, but I didn't really understand it. So then you go to the church and you start asking the other guys about this stuff, and you get the same thing. You know what, don't let this one little thing bother you. We're all going to figure this out later.
It's in Christianity too.
My understanding when we went through the plan of happiness or the plan of salvation, not everyone in the celestial kingdom is exalted to
Godhood.
To God.
That's correct. So if there are three.
Here, in the wording of the T&C, it says if you have been exalted to the celestial kingdom. So, right off the bat, that excludes you from being exalted into a God. Just because you make it into the celestial kingdom based on your doctrine doesn't necessarily mean that you will be exalted to deity or to divinity.
That's correct. So I don't know all about them, because they don't ever talk about them, but there are 3 different degrees even in the celestial kingdom. All I know is that the top one is where you become exalted as a god and you must participate in polygamy. However, if you are simply baptized and you keep all the other Mormon commandments and you never get married, you will go to the celestial kingdom, but you will be a servant unto the others. You'll be, as they say, you'll be as an angel, a helper to those who did get exalted.
So with the celestial kingdom, because I just learned about the used second anointing.
Yeah.
Is the third kingdom inside the celestial kingdom, is that just for those that have their second anointing? Or can others actually progress up to that?
Say that again.
Well, if you've gone through your second anointing,
Okay.
if you're a state president and you've been anointed for the second time, and you're exalted automatically. So
You wouldn't get your second anointing unless you had a wife.
right, but that puts you in the third kingdom automatically.
Correct.
So is that kingdom reserved basically for those that have gone through the second anointing?
No,
So anybody else can progress up to it?
that's correct.
Okay.
anyone who has done their temple work and done all the covenants in the temple, the Masonic handshakes, all that stuff, they are the ones who can enter the highest degree in the celestial kingdom.
That's right. And the truth of it is, you may only have one wife in this world, but in the next, you will be given more. And you will practice polygamy. And you will give permission if you're that wife.
If what George says is true, and I'm sure it is, 90% didn't go along with, how did this survive? How did this doctrine survive? Only 10% of people went along with it.
Only, you know what he said, only 10% of them practiced it.
Practice polygamy on
In
but they didn't
this
say they were
world.
going to practice polygamy in the next kingdom. Of course, you can go in and marry
Same
other
thing. Well, I'll do
women,
that later.
but you can marry other women that are going to carry forward. I like my
And
next
it-
door neighbor. I go check the roster. She isn't married to anybody in the temple. I can go have her sealed. She'll be one of my
That's right.
wives when I get there.
That's right.
She'll not know anything about it, but I got her hooked up.
And another way that happens, if you,
Hey,
another,
it's bizarre.
another way it happens even still today, if you're married and your wife dies, you're sealed to her, your marriage is going to go on after death, and then you meet somebody else and you marry them and you're sealed, your second wife. You're already practicing polygamy in this life. To a degree. Right?
I mean, why do women stay in such a thing when women are getting no benefit whatsoever out of it? They're just going to be used for the rest of their lives. Why do they stay? Why don't they get out?
I'll tell you one thing some of the things that I've heard. First of all, those women in Utah, they had no other way out, okay? But I have heard women in the church today.
Yeah.
I heard one lady in particular to tell, she got up, it was at a stake conference. Somehow she had brought polygamy into her talk, and everybody, of course, sitting on the edge of their seat, because you don't talk about that. But she said she had a tough time with it, and then she thought about her sister. And she said, what if, because remember, you know in the New Testament, Paul says you don't even have to be married to go to heaven. This is not a requirement, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. But to them it is. And she says, what if I get to the celestial kingdom and my sister doesn't have a husband? Do I want my sister to come into heaven with me? Will I share my husband with my sister? And she was very sincere that she would share her husband with her sister in order for them to go to heaven together.
Brainwash.
So that her sister could be exalted and be the queen and goddess of a world and continue to produce children into the eternities. She would give her husband to her sister. But most women, they don't feel that way. You can imagine most women would not share their husband with their sister. Okay. Let's read some of the things that some of the general authorities have said about it. The grand reason of the burst of public sentiment in animus upon Christ and his disciples, causing his crucifixion. This is what they're saying. This is such blasphemy. This is their talk. He's saying this is why Christ was crucified. Was evidently based upon polygamy, according to the testimony of the philosophers who rose in that age. A belief in the doctrine of plurality of wives caused the persecution of Jesus and his followers. We might also think they were Mormons. So the reason Jesus was crucified was because he was a polygamist. I thought they were practicing polygamy in his day and time. It was Paul that was trying to put an end to it, right? Orson Hyde, what does this say? Then you really mean to hold to the doctrine that the Savior of the world was married? Do you mean to be understood so? And if so, do you mean to be understood that he had more than one wife? Now suppose I should set out myself and travel through the cities of the nation as a celebrated reformer. And wherever I went, suppose I had with me 3 or 4 women, one combing my head, another washing my feet, and another shedding tears upon them and wiping them with the hair of her head. Suppose I should lean upon them and they upon me. Would it not appear monstrous in the eyes of the world? When does it say the Savior was married? I believe I will read it for your accommodation. We will turn over to the account of the marriage of Cana of Galilee. Jesus was the bridegroom at that marriage of Cana of Galilee, and he told them what to do. Now there was actually a marriage, and if Jesus was not the bridegroom on that occasion, please tell me who was. If any man can show this and prove that it was not the Savior, I would say you prove that it was. not the Savior of the world, then I will acknowledge I am in error. We say it was Jesus Christ. We, that's the church. We say it was Jesus Christ who was married, to be brought into the relation whereby he could see his seed before he was crucified. I shall say here that before the Savior died, he looked upon his own natural children as we look upon ours. So as Jesus is hanging on the cross, his children from his polygamous marriages were there.
Now let's hear the supporting evidence.
Well, a prophet said it, so that's the evidence. All right, here's another one. It will be borne in mind that once on a time there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and on a careful reading of that transaction, it will be discovered that no less a person than Jesus Christ was married on that occasion. If he was never married, his intimacy with Mary and Martha and the other Mary, also who Jesus loved, must have been highly unbecoming and improper, to say the best of it. Not like Brigham Young here, he just gets right to the point. Now, if any of you will deny the plurality of wives and continue to do so, I promise that you will be damned. The only men who become gods, even the sons of God, are those who enter into polygamy. Here's a modern day Mormon dilemma. Help me try to figure this out. Joseph Smith received the revelation on polygamy known as Doctrine and Covenants 132 as early as 1831. But he said he never practiced it himself. What a thing it is for a man to be accused of committing adultery and having 7 wives when I can only find one. I am the same man and as innocent as I was 14 years ago, and I can prove them all perjurers. This is his cousin here. The prophet was incomparably the most godlike man I ever saw. I know that by nature he was incapable of lying and deceitfulness, possessing the greatest kindness and nobility of character. So Joseph Smith was not capable of lying, according to his cousin. And Joseph Smith himself said in court that he could only find one wife. But what does the LDS Church and its leadership claim that Joseph did practice polygamy and had 30 to 40 wives, which we've discussed in the Mormon essays. So according to the church ancestry website, which I talked about, he had 43. So the question is, who's lying, Joseph or the church? George, do you know?
Well, who's lying?
Yeah.
Well, I think we know.
Both.
In that quote that you read about only having one wife, that happened in March of 1842, and in that time, it's documented that he had 33 wives, including Emma.
Correct.
And he was killed in the shootout, the martyr, in June, 2 months later.
Yeah.
April, May, June, 3 months later. So when the church says up to 40 wives, that's a little different from one.
That's right.
Just the team.
I'm going to read something I just found today. I have this book here called In Sacred Loneliness, The Plural Wives of Joseph Smith. And
is that Fawn Brody?
Todd
Compton, yeah.
And he was given access to a lot of church records. And what he did, and I think he only mentions 33 and possibly 8 more that he comes up with. And it's my understanding that he actually won an award for this book because of its historical accuracy. But let's just list, this is Joseph Smith writing a letter to his 15th wife. Her name is Sarah Ann Whitney. Imagine this is a prophet of God, okay? Let's see. Skip down it. He's writing to Sarah. I know, it's just, you know, I was always told there was only Emma. I was always told there was only Emma. Here he's writing to Sarah. I know it is the will of God that you should comfort me now in the time of affliction. He's writing to this girl trying to get her to come to him. Okay? I know that it is the will of God that you should comfort me now in this time of affliction. And this is 1942, I think. And comfort me in this time of affliction. Or not at all, now is the time or never. But I have no need of saying any such thing to you, for I know the goodness of your heart, and that you will do the will of the Lord when it is made known to you. The only thing to be careful of is to find out when Emma comes. Then you cannot be safe. But when she is not here, there is the most perfect safety. This is just an excerpt of this letter. How old do you think this girl is?
14.
17. And what's even sicker, I'm not going to read the whole thing, is that it's the 17-year-old's mother and father that actually bring, Joseph's in hiding, and they bring the daughter to him. Good book.
You didn't say in the end that burn this letter after you read it?
Yeah. And there's several of them where he's writing to his wives and he tells them to burn the letter, but they didn't. 17-year-old girl doesn't burn her love letters. Sorry.
Yeah. What is the book called?
What's it?
It's called In Sacred Loneliness, The Plural Wives of Joseph Smith by Todd Compton.
Why was he in hiding?
Produced in Salt Lake City. He was in hiding all the time. For a lot of it had to do with his polygamy. I don't know exactly what he was in hiding for this time, but he didn't want to go to wives for that.
Who's the author of those?
Todd Compton. There was one stretch of time that Joseph was imprisoned in the basement of this, I don't know if it was a jail or if it was just somebody's home.
Liberty Jail?
Liberty Jail, yeah. And is that the one?
I don't know. I haven't heard the story yet.
Anyway, Joseph was 6 foot tall, and they said that
Liberty Jail.
It was Liberty Jail, wasn't it? Yeah. But he was in the basement of this thing, and it was only 5.5 feet tall.
Oh.
And so him and the other, and there was several revelations from the Doctrine and Covenants that he was in there for 9 months.
Yeah, it was like 6 or 9 months. Yeah.
So none of these men were able for all those months to stand up completely, and they were in there during the winter, no fire, cold, sleeping on the dirt ground. Horrible circumstance to go through, but he was in and out of trouble and in and out of jail all the time.
When we talk about him being in hiding, the location that he was at was the Missouri-Ohio River. So all he had to do is go from Missouri, cross the river, and he's now in Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And different state laws at the time. And then all he had to do is cross the river and go to Ohio. So it's just, you're rowing across the river.
Well, one of the
now
times
you've got different laws.
he was in hiding from his own people because he had started the Kirtland Bank in Ohio. The bank failed, everybody lost their money, and they were out to kill him. And he was running from his own people there.
Wow.
So he was always in some kind of trouble.
I'm trying to remember if it's something you mentioned, but there was something I had heard about him being upstairs, though, like drinking wine with the jailer or whatever. So it wasn't like, it sounded like they let him out to come hang out upstairs and drink alcohol and stuff at some point. So
I don't think you heard that from me, but I have heard stories where they had, arrested him and his captor, whoever it was that was holding him prisoner, became friends with him, and he must have had one of those.
Jail that
It was Carthage Jail, and they brought him wine to make his heart merry. to lift his spirits.
But he wasn't supposed to, nobody, Mormons aren't supposed to drink wine, but he was drinking wine.
Yes.
Right.
I remember there was one story, I don't know, it was a deputy or somebody who, or maybe it was a federal marshal, I don't remember, but this guy was taking him from one point to the other. He even stopped, stayed in his own home, and his wife took a liking to Joseph. She cooked him dinner, and the guy goes on and tells the story that he was a good-looking man, and he was a kind of guy that the ladies liked.
Did any of your own wives go with him that he had married in New York, Illinois? Do we know?
I think most of the polygamy was in Nauvoo. I mean,
Yeah, but Nauvoo is right on the river.
but it wasn't. You understand? Emma didn't know about all these women. Okay, so it wasn't like he had all these. And we're going to go over in a minute. Some of them were married to other men.
Oh, yeah. Let's get
It's called polyandry. We haven't gotten there yet. So it wasn't like he had. Now, when they got to Utah, it was very much like that. Brigham Young, he had his wives in the house with him, and everything was in the open. But with Joseph, it was not in the open.
He had a big house.
Joseph maintained, I'm not doing anything wrong, but that's wrong.
We're not going to get through this lesson, but I thought I had some more stuff.
Sure, go ahead. No, we're going to get through it. We're not.
What's the reason we wear garments? It's to show that you've been sealed. And at the time, the sealing was to show that you are a polygamist. So in Carthage jail, Joseph wasn't wearing his garments, and his brother Hiram wasn't wearing his garments, because they were being tried for polygamy and something against the state. What do you call it?
I don't know.
He tried killing Governor Boggs.
Oh, yeah, he was being accused of that.
Yeah, so anyways, the point being, he wasn't wearing his garments because he was going to be tried for polygamy. And garments proved that you were a polygamist.
And what they tell you today when they put that garment on, you're supposed to remind you of your chastity to your wife.
Yeah.
You know, the members of the church are held to a much higher standard than the leaders, which is the sign of a cult. When the leaders give out orders and rules that the membership must follow, but they don't have to. Question. If polygamy and polyandry, which we'll talk about in a minute, is a true principle, why is it that in all the movies that the church, this is the one that really got under my skin when, for years I dealt with polygamy and put it on the shelf, didn't think about it, but when this thought hit me, it bothered me tremendously. Why is it that in all the movies that the church has produced over the years about Joseph Smith, he is portrayed as having only one wife, Emma? Now, what do I mean by that? The church produces all kinds of movies, okay? Hundreds of them about Joseph Smith. And all of these movies, and they've been making them since, I guess, the 1950s. This is one of the more recent ones, Praise to the Man. Very good, high production on this one. But in all of these movies, Joseph only has one wife, Emma. And in this Praise to the Man, there's a scene where him and Emma are laying on the ground, and they're looking up at the stars, and they're making sweet little nothings to each other, and you just find them to be this just couple that's totally in love, and it's a complete lie. If polygamy is a true principle, okay, if it's something that we have to do in order to go into the celestial kingdom, then why don't they portray it in their movies, in their literature? Why don't they show Joseph with all of his wives and how loving and caring he was with each one, and what a wonderful thing it would be if we were all polygamous? You know, why did they tell me this? If I tell you something that's not true, it's a lie, correct?
Correct.
If I withhold information from you and let you believe something different. Isn't that the same as lying?
Lie by omission.
Live omission.
So what upset me tremendously about this when I thought about it was that the church is actively lying to me and the members, and they're lying to the public about what really went on. They're lying to me about what kind of man Joseph Smith really was.
But they don't have to worry about that because they've got their second sealing. So we don't have to worry about that because we're trying to further the church. And if we tell a little lie, we're forgiven for that anyway.
Correct, but that's the thing. They have to lie. They can't tell you what kind of man he really was. When this really bothered me, one of the missionaries came over, a good kid, real good kid. When this occurred to me, I asked him, if polygamy is a true principle, we went through the conversation, okay, yeah, Brother Parker, then I guess it says this in our doctrine, I guess we'll have to be polygamous someday. I'm just not worried about it. Well, look, I asked him, if it's a true principle, then why in all these movies the missionaries have been showing me over all these years, the ones they brought movies about Joseph Smith when they were first teaching me. It's a good way to teach, you got a visual, it was a movie to see. Okay, I said, why don't they make their movies and portray the truth and show him and his tender relationships with all of his wives and show the truth? Well, he didn't know what to say. He said, I'm going to go back and ask my district leader, and I want to come back and give you an answer. Okay, that's fair. He comes back a few days later. He said, Brother Parker, I talked to my district leader. You've got to understand, if the church produced a movie like that, no one would join the church.
Exactly.
And I said, you're right, Elder, and neither would I. If they had been truthful to me 20 years ago, I would have never joined the church either. So you're telling me that you're lying to people in order to get them to join the church? Is that what you're saying? Is that what your district leader is telling you? Well, they transferred him.
Oh.
He almost left the church. I heard from another member that after that meeting, he had talked about taking his missionary badge off and going back home. So they transferred him away from me. Sadly, but he was a good kid and he was trying to get me to come back to church.
In talking about that, I find it interesting thinking back, when Mike and I went through the Temple Preparedness class. There was nothing shared about that, about the celestial kingdom and what you had to do to get there, and nothing.
When you get sealed, I don't know if you remember this, because it's kind of like your wedding day, so you're nervous, right? Just like we're human, right? But when you go and you get sealed, usually the priest reads a section of Doctrine and Covenants 132, and I can't remember all of it right now. It doesn't have anything to do about polygamy, but it's about marriage. And he instructs you to go home. He instructs the couple to go home and reread about that and think about the commitment you're making. Blah, blah, blah. I really wish I went home and read that thing.
If your polygamists are sealed, okay, and they're married, what is the relationship then in celestial kingdom? Are they still married?
That's correct. So in the celestial kingdom,
They still have all these
God, Elohim.
even if they're married to more than one man.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that yet. See, that's when I don't understand how that works.
I gotta inject another one.
Go ahead.
Brigham Young gave a really good scolding discourse about Emma's actions and what I forget the exact word, horrible woman she was, because on 2 occasions she poisoned Joseph's coffee in an attempt to kill him.
Really?
Coffee and attempted to kill him.
It was a terrible woman. It didn't work.
It actually talks about how Joseph was vomiting, and he thought he'd eaten something bad, but then learned that Emma poisoned his coffee. And this is the words of Brigham Young.
Now we know that she threw
Yeah, he hated him.
she threw the first wife. She threw down the steps
Oh.
I don't think that was the first, but there was one when
because
she discovered the belly.
she was pregnant.
Yeah, her belly was exposed.
So she kicked her down the stairs trying to kill the baby.
Should have used an iron network.
So
Tiger Woods.
it may have been, I'm not
It
sure.
wasn't her first one, or his first one.
I'm trying to figure out people's minds, that how does the membership accept this from, I gotta do this, but the leadership doesn't have to, or I gotta do this.
Because they don't have that information. It's not given to them, and they don't ask.
Well, I think he's talking about how did they go along with it in the beginning?
Yeah.
Why do they believe it now?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Somebody knew he was drinking coffee other than just Emma, I imagine. That was her downfall. She didn't do a good job.
It's a different time. I mean, what was Emma to
Not
do?
enough poison. Not enough poison.
I mean, it was a different time. So I can't get all this in here, but this is a diagram of, there's Joseph and there's Emma, and these are all of his otherwise, and they try to break it down here. And so 7 wives under 18. It's in your handout. You'll notice that these two are sisters. Remember what we read at the beginning of the class?
Yep.
Where Moses, even when it was practiced in the Old Testament, Moses gave them boundaries not to marry sisters. Joseph did that. Here's two other sisters. Here are 2 sisters. Mother and a daughter said not to do that.
Creepy.
But then this is what you were asking about. Oh, here, all these women, 11 of them, were married to other men. And these men were alive. It wasn't that they had passed away and Joseph taken them. They were very much alive. And most of them were active members of the church. You remember how I told you he got, what got him in trouble was his own counselor, William Law. Joseph made a play on his second counselor, right? So there's 3 of them. You got the prophet, first, second counselor. So he would have been man number 3 in the church. Joseph is hitting on his wife. He does it 2 or 3 times. She goes and tells her husband. He gets upset about it. He leaves. He puts up a printing press and starts to expose Joseph. Joseph is the mayor of Nauvoo. He has the printing press torn apart, the building burned down. He gets in trouble with the governor over, I think it was.
Governor Boggs.
And then he's thrown into Carthage, where he's eventually shot by the Masons from Warsaw Lodge for a totally different reason. But it was his polygamy and his scheming on other men's wives that got him killed.
Tried for treason was the ultimate reason. Polygamy brought him to the Carthage jail, but they kind of dropped the polygamy charge because the assassination attempt on Governor Boggs, who happened to die in Napa Valley.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
immigrated during Gold Rush or whatever.
Yeah, I know, and so I guess they were trying to say that he had ordered Porter Rockwell
Yeah.
to kill him. Somebody had taken a shot at the governor while he was in his home,
It hit him 3 times.
but didn't kill him.
Wow.
So they come looking for Joseph, because there was a rift between, they say Governor Boggs had put out an extermination order on him. Anyway, they come to Nauvoo and they were looking for Porter Rockwell, and they told Joseph what happened. It's just kind of a funny story. You have to know who Porter Rockwell was. He was a long-haired outlaw, whiskey drinking, gun-slinging murderer. And so they come looking for Porter Rockwell, and they told him that the governor had been shot, and Joseph said, it wasn't Porter. Porter would have killed him.
Porter said that, didn't he?
I think it was Joseph that said that. And then he said, well, it wasn't Porter, because if Porter had shot him, he'd killed him. He wouldn't have missed. So, that's Joseph's little family tree there at Brigham Young. Same deal. He had, he was married to other, they call it polyandrous marriages. He was married to other men's wives. One of the stories from one of the women said that Joseph had married them and then instructed them that, well, you know, brothers, you guys are married now, but she's going to spend the night with me. So she spent her wedding night with Joseph and then got up the next morning, went home to her husband and cooked him breakfast, and they never said a word about it. And she said she never felt like an honest woman ever again. Can you imagine it on you're a virgin, your wedding night? It's disgusting.
Nobody ever married Joseph's wife, or Smith's wife, I think.
I don't think so.
Yes, Brigham Young did.
Yeah, Brigham, according to this guy.
A lot of these are women.
Seven women.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Oh, I thought you meant Emma.
No,
No,
I mean,
a
some
lot of-
wives he married, they were not married to other guys. Did anybody ever try to marry any of his wives?
After Joseph's
After he
death.
died.
No, I mean before.
No, after Joseph's death, Emma married a non-member. A Mormon.
Yeah, but Smith married some. The other guys, while they're still alive, did any of the other guys ever married wives?
You want to know if he shared any of his single women
Yes.
with other men? I don't think so.
Well, Brigham Young had so many kids, he could start his own college.
He could have. He could have. I think he had something like 21 wives and 87 children. Something like that.
Who?
Crazy. Brigham Young.
21 wives?
21 wives.
No, Brigham Young had 54 wives,
50.
and somewhere around there, it probably says here, 55 documented marriages in all. So,
Oh yeah, he had more than 21. That's just,
and of those wives, he only had children by, I think it was 19. So a lot of them were just marriages, but no.
maybe, I had heard that he had like 87 children.
Yeah, but that's only by like 19
Yeah,
wives.
maybe it was 87 by 21 wives or
So,
something.
yeah,
like that.
it's actually a kind of a lower number.
Yeah. Dan?
Was Eliza Snow, was she married to Brigham and Joseph at the same time?
I don't think so. I think after Joseph died, Brigham took some of his wives.
Yeah, there's a whole box
How did
there
you
that
support
says
55
wives of
wives?
Joseph Smith.
What a guy.
The dark purple box.
Church
Like payers.
Oh yeah, there you go. The widows of Joseph
Church
Smith.
supported them?
Oh,
So,
I didn't see
how do you
that.
work that out? That they were sealed to Joseph.
Yeah.
Now supposedly they're sealed. They're not supposed to be able to marry anybody else. And Brigham Young comes along and marries them, and I'm sure seals them.
How could God be the author of such confusion? That's one of the things that Mormons like to say about Christendom. How could God be the author of such confusion? But when you get to really studying Mormonism, it's confusing as hell.
It's perversion.
You know what they've told me is that that'll all be worked out in the eternities, and that the women,
Not to worry about it.
not to worry about it,
Put it on the shelf.
because put it on the shelf. And those women who have been sealed to more than one man will, in the eternities, get to pick which husband they spend eternity with.
That's a nice one.
And the men won't really care because they've got a bunch of others. So
Can you
Who
imagine
married
how
him?
the judgment?
He just said, "You are my wife," or did they have a
no, they have a marriage ceremony, just like
ceremony?
In the temple.
Not always.
not always.
They did it in the forest.
Before the temple was built, they got married in people's houses or in the church or whatever.
They didn't have it.
There was another policy similar to celestial marriage where Joseph or whoever would adopt another man as a son or brother so that they could have the two families unite as one in heaven. So it's actually an adoption policy.
All right. It's just a little chart to go through all the different. Describes a lot of the things I went through when I was trying to process being told that Joseph Smith never practiced polygamy, and then the church coming out and telling me that he actually had at least 40 wives.
Well, where are we next week, Billy?
Next week is going to be, we're going to be finishing up, and it's going to be called The Strange Doctrines of Mormonism. And so all through this, there's a lot of peculiar things, crazy, wild stuff in Mormonism, like men living on the moon, all kinds of stuff that just didn't fit anywhere. And it's going to be a hodgepodge of all the stuff, crazy, wild things that if you're a Mormon, you have to own. One last thing. And I'm only pointing this out because Mormons will say, by their fruits ye shall know them. They quote that scripture. And they talk about Joseph Smith. And they say, if you want to know if Joseph was a prophet, look at his fruits. Look at what he did. Look at what we have today. And they talk about this wonderful church that does so much for people and helping them. These are the fruits of the prophet. Joseph Smith was a dirty pervert who was having sex behind his wife's back. He was sneaking around. We read the letter. Sneaking around and having all these extramarital affairs. He was having this secret sex stuff. Well, Utah was ranked #1 in pornography consumption in 2009, and I give you the references for that. One of them is the Deseret News. And the only reason I point that out is because when I found that out, that really struck me. I would have thought California and New York would probably be #1 in consuming, because of being so liberal. It would probably have been #1 in consuming pornography, and I would have expected Utah to be flat dead 50 number last, because I would not have suspected that of the Mormon men. But it's true. 2009, Utah, #1 in the consumption of pornography. By their fruits you shall know them.
So that leaves the door open then for, with the pornography being so prevalent, that leaves the door open for every kind of weirdo sexual activity, including gay and all that kind of stuff, right? Isn't that? Good grief.
And that also, I remember they used to ask me in my temple recommend, they would ask me, do you view pornography? And at some point, a few years ago, they stopped asking. And I thought, well, maybe it's just because I'm getting older and, I'm married, and maybe they just aren't asking me anymore, but maybe because it's so prevalent, they don't want to know the answer if you're looking at pornography. I don't know. But they stopped asking that the last couple of years before that.
Did you find, like with your fellow Mormon friends or whatever that you talked to, did you feel like there was a spirit of, did you feel like there was a different spirit of, I don't know, could you sense any of that in the background, that this comes down, like, how there's spiritual
that they're being
things
pornography?
passed down, or just, just
I would have never thought that from people I went to church. No. And to think that Utah, I just never would have imagined that this would be true. But it comes from Deseret News. I mean, it's...
That actually explains why at every conference, a lot of messages from the residents, in the board meetings, every single one of them are talking about pornography.
I know.
I never could figure out why do they dwell on this topic so much.
I know for several years there, I'm like, why do we keep talking about this stuff?
Yeah.
What would they say? Like, what kind of...
We would have we have general conference every 6 months, right? That's where you get on satellite TV and they talk to the entire world. And I know it's not this much, but it almost seems like half the talks by these guys are on the subject of pornography. And I'm thinking, why do they keep harping on this? This cannot be that big of a problem in the Mormon church.
And that's because
And
they're
it's
all
because
doing that, yeah.
Utah was
and you preach
#1.
about the very thing that you're doing yourself. And they said that about a lot of Christian pastors too, so-called Christian pastors too. They start harping on a subject And when you start, like Jimmy Swaggart did it, and you start to look into the background of these people, and you find this is their issue. This is their serious issue right there. So they're talking about the very thing they're doing. Hell has got a very open, wide mouth. Yeah, yeah. Scary.
You know, we don't have cable, but a number of years ago, they glamorized a family he was a polygamist, and he had his wives and his kids, and then they
Big Love. HBO.
Yeah, so obviously it's going on, and he left the state, correct, and went to a state
Okay,
where...
I should have hit on that.
I don't
So,
think they married them all, though. I think they just have one legal wife and the rest of them just live with them.
correct. So there are, the LDS Church itself, they don't practice polygamy, but they have these splinter groups, like Warren Jeffs, the FLDS. There's the Kingston group is one of them in Utah. There's several splinter groups. But the thing about it is Warren Jeffs, he is more like the prophet Joseph Smith than Thomas S. Monson is. I mean, these splinter groups, they actually open up Doctrine and Covenants 132 and say, this is the commandment, and this is what we're going to do. And they
Follow God's law or follow man's law.
That's right. But there are, polygamy is alive and well in Utah.
Yeah.
So so what you're saying is he's only married to one of the women, but they're just living together with all the other ones. So why did he have to leave the state? He's not practicing polygamy because he's not married to all the other ones legally. He's just living in...
Who had to leave the state? Oh, Warren Jeffs? Is that what you're talking about?
Whoever that show was on.
Oh,
He got arrested for child molestation.
I think he's.
Oh.
Big Love? Oh, yeah, that's a fictional story, but
Oh.
Oh, no, the one based on the reality show. You're
Yeah,
talking
the guy with the
reality
long
show?
hair.
There's
I haven't seen that.
There's like 3 reality shows on
Really?
polygamy.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
When
that.
I was in St. George, Utah, Carol and I were going on a vacation, and she ended up going to the hospital and was in the hospital there for almost 10 days. And I would go next door. I had to buy a fan for her room. I got permission from the hospital. I'm in that store, and I'm seeing multiple women, adults, multiple children of all different ages, all dressed in a lavender outfit. You know, all dressed in a pink outfit. I mean,
With their hair all alike.
all hair identical.
Like they come
You know,
out of the
it's like,
1800s.
this is obviously, you know, these women are not her daughters. They're equal in ages. I mean, it was very, very prevalent in that community. Not hid at all. I mean,
Where was this?
St. George, Utah.
The whole section's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
When I lived in Salt Lake City, like 30 years ago now, but in the neighborhood where my husband grew up, there's several different blocks where there's, the houses all kind of line up, and they've got those juniper trees that grow up in between them, and then they've got the community backyard, and the young boys come out and work on the yard in these little safari-looking hats with jumpsuits on. They're all the same color, and after I didn't believe it at first. Somebody told me, those are the polygamists, and I said, oh no. But then after I thought about it and noticed them more, then I realized they are. And there's several places in Salt Lake City that are set up that same way, where they've got this
They're like
common
compounds.
backyard, and it's kind of secluded, so you really can't see what's going on, and you never see the kids out and about. They don't go to school. It's just
Homeschool.
And they look at the big LDS church as being the apostates because they're not practicing what Joseph and Brigham actually taught. And it's true.
I still want to get back to the legal issue of the polygamy. If they're not married to the wife, the second, third, fourth, and fifth, they're just all living together. How is that against the law from a legal point of view?
I don't
How
know.
does the rest
do
of the
people
world
get-
sin and getting away with it?
Well, are they getting arrested for polygamy
I
still?
think part of what tipped Warren Jeffs off is because a lot of these people, he's married to one, but what was happening, he was collecting welfare checks for all the other wives, and I think
Okay,
that
so there's
caught up
fraud
with him a
on-
little bit.
There's probably a money issue.
A money issue, and that's what tipped him off, because he was living very well, and it's like, wait a minute, how can you do this with the job you have? And then they realized that a lot of the government welfare help, everything was going through the wives to him.
Sure.
I have another question though. What about, who's the group that when the little boys grow up and they send them out?
That's the Quakers.
No, it's a
Amish?
Mormon, no, it's a Mormon group.
Send them out.
It's called the Lost Boys.
Oh.
And when there, I think it's in Arizona anyway.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, yeah.
When the,
Because I have
Send them out to
relatives
do
that
what?
live in St. George, Utah, and there's a lot of boys, like 14, 15,
Yeah.
that show up there, and in Las Vegas too, because they come from the polygamous families.
and there's too many boys.
They don't.
Oh, yeah.
But also the older men don't want the competition
Yes,
of the younger boys.
yes.
Ah.
So they send the boys away. They take them
Yes.
far away from home, just drop them off
Yeah.
and leave them.
But they
Oh.
just take them and leave them in a desolate place with no means of support. And the parents are Mormons, but because they were raised thinking with skewed thinking, these boys, like she said, it's in competition for the older men. And some of the girls that fall for these young boys are really put in jail. They're tied up. It's horrible what it happens to them. And then they take these boys. There was a story, I was reading a book of a sister who was trying to save her brothers in a polygamous family from being cast out of the family. And she was even talking to one of the mothers, because there were multiple mothers, of why are you doing this? And their hearts were completely cold. And they dropped these kids off like in the middle of nowhere. And they were never to ever contact their family and friends again.
You know, and when all this stuff comes up, and they'll ask the LDS church about it, they'll say, oh, we don't have anything to do with those groups. They're not a part of us.
Oh.
We don't practice.
Oh.
It is a part of you.
Yes.
It's in your doctrine. All of this is the fruits of Joseph Smith.
This is the fruit of this polygamy.
This is
There's
the fruit.
way too many children.
But they'll say, no, that has nothing to do with us. Those are apostate groups, and we don't have anything to do. Yes, you do.
And don't we know that there are only two forces working here on earth? Two forces, right?
That's right.
And this is definitely not from God's side of the issue.
No, it's not.
Totally. So Lucifer is in charge of this stuff. And we're talking here about what Lucifer is doing. That's exactly what all the cults are in. Isn't it the saddest thing ever?
The other thing that comes to my mind, you talk about the legal point of it. He may legally go down to the courthouse and marry his first wife, but he doesn't just live with the second, third, and fourth. There is a priesthood holder that marries them. It may not be on the
In the recorder's
in the
office.
recorder's office
Right.
downtown, but I mean, they're not just living together. They're married.
They, once in a while, and I haven't seen but one for a while, but they do documentaries on multiple wives and things like that. The lady's talking about the kids. They did a documentary on that a few years back too. They do literally drop off those young men because they're competing with the older guys for the young girls.
Didn't know. George?
There's a website, you might want to write it down. The lady's name is Doris Hanson. Her program, she has a TV 20, I think it is, in Utah. It's called Polygamy, What Love Is This? And she's been talking now for almost 10 years. There is a huge amount of data there. She grew up in one of these splinter groups. She started what's called the Hager House, and part of the Hager House is for, I think that's a biblical name, maybe a woman was named
Hagar.
Yes.
Hagar?
Yes.
Yeah. Sarah.
Part of that is for people leaving polygamy so they have a home to come to. And the Lost Boys is part of her focus group as well. So not only is she trying to help the girls out, but she's trying to help the boys out.
She's got a YouTube channel and there's some very sad stories.
On one of the
Is that
documentaries
Hanson,
we were watching, they were talking about how,
I think it's Ian.
the Warren Jeffs called, that, they never complete a house. So that a house is always in disrepair, because if it's not completed, the construction's not completed, they don't pay property tax.
That's right.
Wow.
Figure out ways.
Well, that's supposedly true in Mexico also. I'm not sure if it is, but I've heard that.
George?
Can I give a fun statistic?
Sure.
It's not 100% accurate, but I think you'll get the point. If you go on the internet and type world clock for the human race, every like 2 or 3 times a second a person's born, and death is almost just as quick. So I mean, birth is definitely rising. So if you take that number and divide that number by 90,000 wives. So when I die and go to heaven, I have 90,000 wives. It'll take me, and I have sexual relations with those wives every it's like 2.2, every 4.22 seconds. For 25 million years, it'll take me to produce the offspring for 1 year here on Earth.
It's a lot of work.
You kind of see that? Now, this statistic allows you, that's 24 hours a day as a man.
Wait a minute, you're a god now.
I'm breathing every 4.2 seconds. And I get Sunday off though, because that's a day of rest. Now, how could God answer your prayers if he's having to breathe every 4.5 seconds?
Wow.
25 million years,
Sound like-
90,000 women.
Sounds like a lot of work. It doesn't sound like
Simple
heaven.
math, you go look it up yourself, do the math.
All right, let's,
Pray out here.
all right, with
On
that,
that note.
thank you, Apollo. We will,